Dr. Hyun-Woo Park stared at his computer screen in the small laboratory at Seoul Institute of Technology. The numbers dancing across the monitor made no sense. For 3 days, his radio telescope had been picking up something strange from deep space. It was not random noise. It was not a pulsar. It was something else entirely. "Ji-eun, come look at this," he called to his research partner. Dr. Ji-eun Lee rolled her chair over from her desk. She was the best quantum communications expert in Korea, maybe in all of Asia. If anyone could make sense of these signals, it would be her. "What am I looking at?" she asked, adjusting her glasses. "A signal from the Vega system. But look at the pattern." Hyun-Woo pointed at the screen. "It repeats every 4.7 hours. And these mathematical sequences. They're prime numbers but arranged in a way I've never seen." Ji-eun leaned closer. Her eyes grew wide. "This isn't natural. Someone is sending this." "That's what I thought too." Hyun-Woo felt his heart beating faster. "But there's more. Look at this section here." He clicked on another part of the data. New patterns appeared. These were more complex. They showed star maps, mathematical formulas, and something that looked like molecular structures. "My God," Ji-eun whispered. "This is a message. Someone is trying to talk to us." Far away in a massive ship floating near Jupiter, Commander Vexthai reviewed his transmission report. The message had been sent according to standard Galactic Coalition protocols. It contained all the required elements, mathematical proofs to show intelligence, star charts to demonstrate knowledge, and most importantly, the submission requirements. The Coalition had discovered this small blue planet 3 months ago. Initial scans showed a primitive species that had barely learned to split the atom. They were perfect candidates for integration into the Coalition's lower worker castes. The species showed promise in certain areas but clearly needed proper guidance. Vexthai had sent the standard first contact message. It explained the reality of galactic civilization. It showed the primitive species their place in the natural order. It gave them the chance to submit peacefully and be integrated as useful workers. Most species were grateful for this opportunity. He expected a response within a few solar cycles. Primitive species usually sent back simple mathematical confirmations, showing they understood their position. Then the real work could begin, teaching them basic technologies and preparing them for their roles in Coalition society. Back on Earth, Hyun-Woo and Ji-eun worked around the clock to decode the message. They brought in other scientists. Dr. Won-Sik Han, a mathematician from Yonsei University, helped decode the number sequences. Professor In-ho Baek, a linguist from Seoul National University, tried to find patterns in what might be language. "I think I understand part of this," Won-Sik said after 2 weeks of work. "These mathematical proofs, they're showing us new ways to calculate space-time relationships. This is advanced physics far beyond what we know." "And this section here," In-ho added, pointing to another part of the decoded message, "it seems to be explaining their social structure. There are multiple species working together in some kind of alliance or federation." Hyun-Woo felt excitement building in his chest. "They're inviting us to join them. This is an invitation to become part of a galactic community." Ji-eun was studying the technical sections. "Look at this. They're showing us the principles behind faster-than-light communication. And this looks like the basics of FTL travel itself." The scientists worked in secret at first. They knew how the world would react to news of alien contact. But soon word began to spread. Government officials arrived at their laboratory. General Sang-ho Lee from the Defense Ministry came with a team of military scientists. President Tae Min-yoon himself visited to see the alien message. "What are they asking of us?" President Yoon asked, looking at the walls covered with printed data and equations. "They're welcoming us," Hyun-Woo explained. "They're showing us that we're not alone in the universe. They want us to join their galactic community. And in return, they're offering knowledge. Science beyond our current understanding. The chance to travel to the stars." President Yoon was quiet for a long moment. He was a careful man, but he was also curious. "What do we do next?" "We respond," Ji-yoon said firmly. "We show them that humanity is ready to join the galaxy." The decision was made to create a response team. Scientists, artists, musicians, philosophers, and historians all contributed. They would send back a message showing the best of humanity. They would prove that Earth was ready for the stars. Min-ho Kim, a young engineer who had been studying the alien physics, made an important discovery. "I think I understand how their faster-than-light communication works," he told the team. "If I'm right, we can build our own transmitter. We can send a message back that reaches not just them, but potentially every civilization in the galaxy. Is that wise? General Lee asked. Shouldn't we be more careful about who knows we exist? Hyunwoo shook his head. They've already reached out to us. They know we exist, and if there are other civilizations out there, don't they deserve to know about us too? Don't we deserve to know about them? The team began preparing Earth's response. They gathered human music, from traditional Korean folk songs to modern K-pop, from Beethoven to blues. They included human art, literature, and poetry. They shared human science and mathematics, showing their own discoveries and innovations. But most importantly, they shared human values. The message spoke of freedom, of the right of all intelligent beings to determine their own destiny. It spoke of cooperation, of sharing knowledge freely rather than hoarding it. It spoke of hope for a future where all species could work together as equals. President Yoon reviewed the final message before transmission. Are we sure about this? He asked. Once we send this, there's no going back. The world will change forever. The world is already changing, Hyunwoo replied. We just discovered we're not alone. The question is, do we hide in fear, or do we step forward with courage? The transmission began on a clear spring morning. The signal was stronger than anything Earth had ever broadcast. Using the alien principles that Minho had decoded, it reached not just the coalition ship near Jupiter, but spread across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. Commander Vexthai received the human response with confusion, then growing alarm. This was not what he had expected. Instead of submission, the humans were broadcasting their existence to the entire galaxy. Instead of accepting their assigned role, they were presenting themselves as equals. Worse, they were sharing advanced physics that the coalition restricted to higher caste species. The humans had decoded their quantum communication principles in just weeks. They had reverse-engineered the basics of FTL travel, and now they were broadcasting this knowledge freely to anyone who could receive it. Vexthai opened an emergency channel to Coalition Command. Sir, we have a problem. The primitive species on Earth, they didn't understand the message. They think they're being invited to join as equals, and they're sharing restricted technologies across the galaxy. The response from Coalition Command was swift and angry. Contain the situation, Commander. Use whatever force is necessary. This cannot be allowed to spread. But across the galaxy, other species were already receiving Earth's broadcast. On a dozen worlds, scientists and philosophers read humanity's message with wonder. For the first time in thousands of years, they heard someone speaking of freedom, of equality, of shared knowledge. The galaxy would never be the same. 3 months had passed since Earth sent its message to the stars. The world had changed in ways nobody could have imagined. The secret was out now. Every major government knew about the alien contact. The news had spread to the public, causing excitement, fear, and wonder in equal measure. Dr. Hyunwoo Park stood in what was now called the Galactic Communications Center, built in record time outside Seoul. The facility buzzed with activity day and night. Scientists from around the world had come to help decode the flood of responses that were arriving from across the galaxy. Hyunwoo, you need to see this, Jiun called from her workstation. Her voice was tight with excitement and concern. He walked over to find her staring at multiple data streams. What am I looking at? Responses. Dozens of them. And they're not all from the same source as the original message. Jiun pointed to different signals on her screen. This one is from the Centauri system. This one from somewhere near Orion, and I think this one is from another galaxy entirely. What are they saying? That's the problem. Some are welcoming. Some are warnings. At his workstation nearby, Minho Kim was deep in calculations. The young engineer had become obsessed with understanding alien technology. Day and night, he worked on the physics principles hidden in the alien messages. His breakthrough 3 weeks ago had stunned everyone. It's possible, he had announced to the assembled team. Faster than light travel. Not just communication, but actual physical travel. The math works. Now he was building something based on that math. In a secure facility 20 kilometers away, construction crews worked around the clock on humanity's first FTL-capable vessel. They called it the Soul's Pride. President Taemin Yoon arrived at the communication center with his new advisor, So Young Choi. She had been selected as Earth's first ambassador to the stars. A former diplomat with experience in complex international negotiations, She now faced the challenge of her life, representing humanity to an entire galaxy. "What's the current situation?" President Yoon asked. "Complex," Hyun-woo replied. "We've received friendly contact from 17 different species. They seem genuinely interested in meeting us as equals, but we've also received 3 clear warnings. Someone out there is very unhappy about our broadcast. The original senders? We think so. The mathematical signature matches, but their tone has changed completely. The first message seemed welcoming, even if formal. These new ones, their demands." Ambassador So Young studied the translated messages displayed on the wall screens. "They're telling us to stop broadcasting. They want us to submit to something called proper evaluation and integration procedures." "What does that mean?" Ji-eun pulled up another file. "Based on the other responses we've received, we think it means they want to classify us as a lower-level species, a worker caste in their galactic hierarchy. And if we refuse, the last message was quite clear about that," Hyun-woo said grimly. "They're coming here." In the Coalition command ship now moving through Earth's solar system, Commander Vexthai reviewed his orders with growing unease. High Command had been clear. The human problem must be contained. Their broadcast had reached too many systems. 17 species had already begun questioning Coalition authority. 3 had stopped sending their required tribute payments. "Commander," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving another human broadcast. This one isn't different." Vexthai reviewed the new transmission. Instead of the general message sent 3 months ago, this was targeted specifically at oppressed species in Coalition space. It contained detailed technical specifications for FTL communication, energy generation, and space travel. Everything enslaved species would need to break free from Coalition control. "They're sharing everything," Vexthai whispered. "Every piece of restricted technology. They're giving it away for free." His science officer, a member of the subjugated Kree species, looked up from his console. "Sir, these designs, they're improvements on our own technology. These humans have enhanced our FTL principles in ways we never thought possible." On Earth, the team at the Communication Center was expanding rapidly. Dr. Won-sik Han led a group of mathematicians working on new physics principles shared by friendly alien species. Professor In-ho Baek coordinated with linguists worldwide to develop translation protocols for dozens of alien languages. Jae-sung Lim, a former Korean telecommunications executive, now headed Earth's new Galactic Communications Division. His job was to manage the growing network of contacts across the galaxy. Every day brought new species making contact, sharing their own knowledge, and asking for help. "The Zenthari have achieved FTL flight," he reported to the daily briefing. "They used our modifications to their engines. They're already traveling to 3 other systems to share the technology." "What about the Korth?" Ambassador So Young asked. "They've declared independence from something called the Coalition. Apparently, they've been forced to mine rare elements for thousands of years. Our energy generation principles mean they don't need to anymore." General Sang-ho Lee, who had been quiet through most of the briefing, finally spoke. "And the Coalition's response to all this?" "They're coming," Hyun-woo said simply. "Our long-range sensors picked up their fleet 2 days ago. 50 ships approaching from the outer system." "How long do we have?" 6 weeks. The room fell silent. 6 weeks to prepare for humanity's first contact with a hostile alien force. "What about the Soul's Pride?" President Yoon asked. Min-ho looked up from his calculations. "Ready for testing. The FTL drive is installed and calibrated, but we've never actually tried it." "We need to try it now," Ambassador So Young said firmly. "We need to reach our new allies. If the Coalition is coming here, we need help." The next week was frantic preparation. The Soul's Pride completed its first FTL jump to the Centauri system, where the Zephyri species welcomed them with celebration. Captain Woojin Seo, the ship's pilot, reported back that the journey took only 3 days instead of the years it should have taken with conventional travel. "The Zephyri want to help," he transmitted back to Earth. "They're preparing their own fleet to join us." Similar news came from other systems. The Korth were sending mining ships converted to carriers. The Zenthari were bringing their advanced shield technology. Even species that had been neutral in galactic politics were taking sides. But the most important news came from an unexpected source. A single Coalition ship had broken away from the main fleet and was approaching Earth alone. Its commander was requesting permission to speak directly with Earth's leaders. It could be a trap, General Lee warned. Or it could be an opportunity, Ambassador So-Young replied. We won't know unless we listen. The coalition ship landed at a secure facility outside Seoul. Commander Vexthai emerged alone, without weapons or guards. He was tall, with blue-gray skin and large dark eyes. Despite his alien appearance, his body language showed nervousness and uncertainty. I am Vexthai of the Coalition Defense Corps, he said through a translation device. I request to speak with your leaders. I am So-Young Choi representing Earth and humanity, the ambassador replied. Why have you come here alone? Vexthai was quiet for a moment. Because I have seen your broadcasts. I have read your messages to the oppressed species. And I have watched my own crew, species I have commanded for years, begin to question everything they have been taught. He paused, looking directly at her. I think the coalition has been wrong about everything. And I think my fleet is about to attack a species that represents the galaxy's best hope for freedom. What do you propose? Help me understand what humanity really wants. And if I am convinced you are right, help me stop a war that will destroy both our peoples. Ambassador So-Young smiled. Commander Vexthai, I think that can be arranged. As they walked toward the meeting facility, neither of them knew that across the galaxy, the first shots of the galactic revolution were already being fired. The Zinthari had attacked a coalition supply depot. The Korth had seized control of their mining facilities, and 17 other species were following humanity's example, declaring their independence and their right to determine their own destinies. The galaxy was at war, and humanity had started it not with weapons but with words. The Soul's Pride emerged from hyperspace near the coalition capital world, with Ambassador So-Young Choi and a small crew aboard. The massive planet below them was unlike anything they had ever seen. Cities covered entire continents, and space elevators stretched up from the surface like silver threads connecting the world to its orbital stations. Look at the size of this place, whispered Woo Jin Seo, the ship's pilot. How many people live down there? According to our intelligence, about 40 billion, replied Hye-Jin Kang, Earth's security chief for the mission. Representatives from over 300 species. So-Young studied the data streaming across her console. They had arrived at a critical moment. Across the galaxy, rebellions were spreading. The Zinthari had just declared complete independence and were helping other species break free from coalition control. The network of freedom that had started with Earth's first broadcast was growing stronger every day. Commander Vexthai, now serving as their guide and translator, pointed to the largest structure on the planet below. The Supreme Assembly meets there. That is where galactic law is decided. And where we will make our case, So-Young said firmly. They had spent 2 weeks on Earth with Vexthai before this mission. During that time, the coalition commander had learned things that shook him to his core. He had seen human cities where different species would live as equals. He had watched human children learn about alien cultures with excitement rather than fear. Most importantly, he had observed humans sharing their most advanced technologies freely with anyone who asked. Your people, he had said to So-Young during one of their conversations, they do not think like any species I have known. The coalition teaches that knowledge is power, and power must be controlled. But humans share knowledge as if it costs nothing. That's because it doesn't, she had replied. Knowledge grows when it is shared. It dies when it is hoarded. Now, as their ship approached the coalition capital, Vexthai sent the codes that would allow them safe passage. The response came back immediately. The Supreme Assembly would see them, but they had only one chance to speak before judgment was passed. On Earth, the situation was growing more complex by the day. Jae-Sung Lim sat in the expanded communications center, managing conversations with 43 different species. Each group had different needs, different languages, and different levels of technology. But all of them had one thing in common: they wanted freedom. The Dracor have successfully modified their ships using our designs, reported Dr. Won-Se-Kan. They're now capable of independent space travel for the first time in 3,000 years. What about the Viz? Asked Dr. Hyun-Woo Park, who was coordinating the massive knowledge-sharing project. They've broken the genetic locks that kept them from reproducing freely. Their population is already starting to grow again. Each success story was also a problem for the coalition. Every species that gained independence was one less source of tribute, workers, and resources. The galactic economy that had been built on oppression was starting to collapse. General Sang-Ho Lee entered the center with urgent news. The Coalition main fleet has stopped advancing toward Earth. They're regrouping near Jupiter. Why? Hyun-woo asked. Because half their ships have crews that are now questioning their mission. We're receiving defection requests every hour. It was true. Coalition ships were crewed by members of dozens of species, many of whom were now learning about the freedom offered by the Human Alliance. Some ships had experienced mutinies. Others had simply disappeared, probably joining the growing rebel fleet. At the Coalition capital, the Supreme Assembly was in chaos. High Counselor Morden, the ancient leader of the Coalition, called for order as representatives from 300 species argued loudly in dozens of languages. The humans must be contained, declared the representative from the hegemony worlds. Their influence is destroying the natural order. What natural order? Shouted back the Xanthari delegate, who had arrived despite being declared a rebel. The order that keeps my people as slaves while you live in luxury. Ambassador So Young entered the Great Hall with her small delegation. The building was enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed a holographic display of the galaxy. Thousands of representatives filled curved rows of seats, each section designated for different species and allegiances. The human delegation will present their case, High Counselor Mordoon announced. His voice echoed through the chamber with artificial amplification. So Young stepped forward to the central speaking platform. She had prepared for this moment for weeks, but seeing the assembled representatives of galactic civilization still took her breath away. Honored representatives, she began, her words translated simultaneously into hundreds of languages. I stand before you not as a conqueror, but as an advocate for freedom. The chamber erupted in noise. Some delegates cheered. Others shouted protests. Morden called for silence. The Coalition has maintained order for 50,000 years, Morden said coldly. Your people have existed for barely 10,000. What could you possibly teach us about governance? Nothing about governance, So Young replied calmly, but everything about choice. She activated a holographic display that showed Earth's response to first contact. When we received the Coalition's message, we could have responded with fear. We could have hidden. Instead, we chose to share what we had learned with anyone who wanted to learn. The display changed to show the results. Species across the galaxy developing new technologies, breaking free from restrictions and choosing their own paths. The Coalition message told us that there was a natural hierarchy, that some species are meant to rule while others serve, but we have seen no evidence of this in nature. We have seen only that intelligence takes many forms, and all intelligent beings deserve the right to choose their own destiny. A delegate from the worker species shouted, easy words from a species that has never known oppression. So Young nodded. True, but we have known war. We have known division. We have spent thousands of years fighting among ourselves, and we learned that cooperation is stronger than domination, that shared knowledge grows faster than hoarded secrets. Commander Vexthai stepped forward. The chamber fell silent at seeing a Coalition officer supporting the human position. I have spent my life enforcing Coalition law, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I believed that hierarchy was natural, that some species needed guidance from others, but I have seen what humans accomplish through cooperation. I have seen the technologies they develop when knowledge is shared freely, and I have realized that the Coalition's greatest fear is not human aggression, but human generosity. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Representatives from oppressed species spoke of generations of suffering under Coalition rule. Others defended the stability that hierarchy provided. But slowly, a pattern emerged. Those who supported the Coalition were mostly from species that benefited from the current system, while those who supported humanity came from species that had been exploited. During a break in the proceedings, Mordoon approached So Young privately. You do not understand what you are doing, he said. The galaxy requires order. Without hierarchy, without control, there will be chaos. Perhaps, So Young replied, but chaos chosen freely is better than order imposed by force. The High Counselor's ancient eyes studied her carefully. Your species is very young. You have not seen what happens when civilizations collapse, when species war among themselves without guidance. We have seen what happens when species are denied the right to make their own mistakes and learn from them, she countered. We call it stagnation. Back on Earth, the coalition fleet near Jupiter was facing a crisis. Almost half the ships now had crews in open rebellion against their orders. Coalition Command was demanding that the fleet admiral, Tormek of the Hegemony, either advance on Earth immediately or withdraw to loyal space. Admiral Tormek found himself in an impossible position. Advancing meant civil war within his own fleet. Withdrawing meant admitting that a primitive species had defeated the coalition without firing a shot. His decision came when he received a personal message from his own son, serving on a coalition mining station. The young hegemony officer had read the human broadcasts about equality and freedom. His message was simple. Father, for the first time in my life, I am proud of what I do. I help people instead of oppressing them. Please do not make me choose between my duty to the coalition and my duty to my conscience. At the Supreme Assembly, the final vote was called. Each species would decide, continue with the coalition's hierarchical system, or join the new alliance based on equality and shared knowledge. The result was closer than anyone expected, but clear. 163 species voted to dissolve the coalition and form a new government based on equality. 137 voted to maintain the old system. High Counselor Morden stood slowly as the results were announced. For 50,000 years, his species had led the galaxy. Now that age was ending. The coalition is dissolved, he said formally. Long live. Whatever comes next. So Young felt a mixture of triumph and terror. Humanity had achieved something unprecedented. The peaceful transformation of galactic civilization. But now came the harder task of building something better to replace what they had torn down. As she prepared to return to Earth with news of their success, she received an urgent. The coalition fleet arrived at Earth's solar system, but not as anyone had expected. Admiral Tormek's ships came in peace, carrying thousands of refugees from species that had chosen freedom over security. However, not all coalition forces had accepted the Supreme Assembly's decision. High Counselor Morden had kept his most loyal ships, those crewed entirely by the ruling species who had the most to lose from the new order. These ships, calling themselves the True Coalition, had declared the Assembly vote invalid and were approaching Earth with hostile intent. Captain Minjai Song stood on the bridge of Earth's hastily constructed flagship, the New Soul. Around him, a mixed fleet of human and alien vessels prepared for what might be the most important battle in galactic history. The ships looked strange together. Sleek human designs mixed with the organic curves of Zenthari vessels and the angular efficiency of Korth mining ships converted for war. Status report, Minjay called. 47 friendly ships ready for combat, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Eugene Park. The True Coalition force has 32 vessels, but they're all military-grade warships with experienced crews. And we're mostly civilians with mining ships and research vessels. Minjai said grimly. This should be interesting. On Earth, engineer Yisu Nam worked frantically in her laboratory. The planet's defenses were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of massive space stations with heavy weapons, Earth had built thousands of small intelligent drones. Each one was controlled by advanced AI and programmed with one simple mission: protect Earth by any means necessary. The swarm is ready, she reported to General Sang-Ho Lee, who was coordinating Earth's defense from a bunker beneath Seoul. 15,000 drones, each one capable of independent action. And the other surprises? Yisu smiled grimly. Let's just say that the True Coalition is about to learn why humans are good at war. The first engagement began near Mars. The True Coalition ships advanced in perfect formation, their weapons powered and shields raised. They expected a traditional space battle with clear lines and established rules of engagement. Instead, they encountered chaos. Human drones swarmed around their ships like angry insects. The drones were too small to target effectively, but each one carried enough explosives to damage critical systems. When coalition ships tried to destroy the drones, they found that hitting one often triggered the others nearby to explode simultaneously. This is not proper warfare, complained Commander Nexron of the True Coalition as his ship's sensors were destroyed by a coordinated drone attack. Where are their battle lines? Where is their command structure? Humans do not fight like civilized species, his tactical officer replied, struggling to track the swirling mass of small targets around their fleet. They fight like animals. They were not entirely wrong. Admiral Sang-Ho Lee had studied every military conflict in human history for inspiration. The tactics he had developed combined the guerrilla warfare of Earth's past with the three-dimensional possibilities of space combat. Hit and run, he instructed his captains over the communication network. Never stay in one place long enough for them to target you effectively. Use their size against them. Captain Min-jae took his ship, the New Seoul, in a high-speed dive toward a coalition battleship. Just before the enemy could fire their main weapons, he triggered the ship's new emergency FTL system, a modification that allowed short jumps within a solar system. The New Seoul disappeared from in front of the battleship and reappeared behind it, firing at the engines before jumping away again. The coalition forces found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Human ships would attack from one direction, then disappear and attack from another. The swarm drones seemed to anticipate their movements, always appearing where they were most vulnerable. But the most effective weapon was not military at all. Soo-jin Park, Dr. Hyun-woo's daughter and Earth specialist in alien psychology, had been broadcasting continuously to the coalition ship since the battle began. Attention, coalition crews, her voice reached. Every ship through quantum communication channels that could not be blocked. You are fighting for leaders who see you as expendable. You are dying to preserve a system that considers you inferior. Why? Her words were translated into dozens of languages and broadcast on frequencies each species used for internal communication. She had studied coalition psychology for months, learning how different species thought and what motivated them. To the Vorhai crew on the battleship Domination, she broadcast specifically, "Your homeworld was strip-mined to build that ship you're flying. The coalition took your resources and gave you weapons to fight their wars. Is this honor?" To the Kesh fighters in Squadron 7, she continued, "Your people were forced to serve in coalition military because you were too aggressive for civilian roles. But aggression used to defend freedom is different from aggression used to oppress others." One by one, coalition ships began to break formation. Some simply stopped fighting and declared neutrality. Others turned their weapons on their own command ships. The true coalition fleet, which had seemed so powerful, was falling apart from within. Commander Nexron watched his fleet disintegrate around him. Half his ships had either fled or joined the human alliance. His own crew was openly questioning orders. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from 6 more ships, and the Kesh squadron is demanding to speak with human representatives about joining their alliance." "This is impossible," Nexron muttered. "We are the superior force. We have better weapons, better training, better ships. How are we losing to primitives?" His science officer, a young member of the Altair species, looked up from his console. "Perhaps, Commander, we are not losing to their weapons. We are losing to their ideas." The battle's turning point came when the true coalition flagship, the Eternal Order, attempted to break through Earth's defenses directly. High Counselor Morden himself was aboard, determined to prove that the old ways were stronger than human idealism. The massive ship, larger than anything Earth had ever built, swept aside the drone swarms and headed straight for the planet. Its shields deflected the attacks from human ships, and its weapons carved through space toward Earth's orbital facilities. But engineer Yisu Nam had prepared for this possibility. As the Eternal Order approached Earth, it passed through what looked like empty space. Hidden there, invisible to coalition sensors, were gravity generators based on principles shared by the Zenthari species and improved by human engineering. "Now," Yisu whispered, and activated the gravity trap. The Eternal Order suddenly found itself caught in an artificial gravity well that pulled it toward Luna. The ship's engines, powerful as they were, could not break free. Worse, the gravity field was fluctuating in a pattern that put tremendous stress on the ship's hull. "Impossible," High Counselor Morden stated, watching his flagship shake itself apart. "Primitives cannot command gravity itself." "They can when someone teaches them how," replied his own science advisor, who had been secretly reading human broadcasts for weeks. "And they improve on what they learn faster than we thought possible." The Eternal Order's hull cracked under the gravitational stress. Emergency systems activated automatically, preparing to evacuate the crew. But as escape pods launched, they were intercepted not by weapons, but by rescue ships. Human vessels, along with ships from allied species, moved in to save coalition crew members even as the battle continued around them. They provided medical aid, food, and safety to their enemies without asking for anything in return. High Counselor Morden found himself rescued by Captain Min Jae-song himself. Why? The ancient coalition leader asked as he was brought aboard the new Soul. Why save the life of your enemy? Min Jae looked at him with genuine confusion. Because you are not my enemy. Your ideas are my enemy. You are just someone who believed those ideas. Now you have a chance to learn better ones. The battle ended not with a great explosion or heroic victory speech, but with quiet surrender. The remaining true coalition ships, seeing their flagship captured and their crews treated with kindness rather than vengeance, simply stopped fighting. Commander Nexron was the last to surrender. When human boarding parties came to his ship, he expected to be executed or imprisoned. Instead, they offered him food and medical care for his wounded crew. What happens now? He asked Captain Min Jae. Now you choose, Min Jae replied. You can return to coalition space and continue believing that some species are superior to others. Or you can stay and help us build something better. Nexron looked around his bridge at crew members from 6 different species, all of whom had been willing to die for coalition ideals an hour ago. Now they were listening to human medics explain how their injuries could be treated, and human engineers describe how their ship could be repaired. And if we stay, then you work alongside us as equals. You contribute what you can, you learn what you need, and you help decide what kind of galaxy we build together. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Nexron felt something he had never experienced before. Hope. The test of strength was over. Humanity had won not by being stronger, but by being better. 6 months after the battle at Earth, the galaxy was a very different place. The Free Species Alliance had grown to include over 200 worlds, each contributing their knowledge and culture to the growing community. The old coalition territories were transforming as former slave species became partners in their own development. President Tai Min-yoon stood in the Great Assembly Hall on Luna, which had been built to accommodate representatives from dozens of species. Today was special, the signing of the Alliance Charter, the document that would govern how free species would work together. This document represents something new in galactic history, President Yoon said to the assembled delegates, not rule by the strong over the weak, but cooperation between equals. At a table nearby, former High Counselor Morden sat with other coalition leaders who had chosen to join the alliance. The ancient being looked tired but somehow lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. I have ruled for 50,000 years, he had told President Yoon privately the week before. I convinced myself that hierarchy was natural, that order required oppression. I was wrong. Watching these past months, seeing what species accomplish when they are free to choose, I was completely wrong. Commander Vexthai, now calling himself Dalsu in honor of his transformation, had become one of Earth's most trusted advisors. He worked closely with General Kyung Ho-an to establish the Alliance Defense Corps, not an army of conquest, but a force dedicated to protecting emerging civilizations from future would-be oppressors. The hardest part, Dalsu explained to new recruits, is not the fighting. It is learning to see every intelligent being as equal, regardless of their technology level or cultural development. This requires more strength than any weapon. Dr. Hyunwoo Park and Dr. Ji-eun Lee had established the Galactic Knowledge Exchange in a massive facility on Luna's surface. Species from across the galaxy came here to share their discoveries, learn from others, and work together on projects that no single civilization could accomplish alone. Look at this, Ji-eun said excitedly, showing Hyunwoo the latest research results. The Zenthari understanding of energy, combined with human engineering and Korth mineral knowledge, has produced a power source that's completely clean and incredibly efficient, and everyone gets the plans for free. Of course, that's how it works now. The transformation had not been without challenges. Some species found it difficult to adapt to equality after millennia of either ruling or being ruled. There were conflicts, misunderstandings, and failures, but there were also successes that amazed everyone involved. The Dracor, who had been unable to reproduce freely under coalition genetic controls, now had colonies on 17 worlds. The Vis, former mining slaves, had become the galaxy's leading experts on sustainable resource extraction. Even former coalition military species like the hegemony had found new purposes as peacekeepers and teachers. Captain Min Jae, Song commanded one of the new exploration fleets that searched for emerging civilizations. His crew was mixed: humans, former coalition species, and newly liberated peoples working together. Their mission was to make peaceful contact with developing species and offer them the choice to join the galactic community as equals. Contact established with a species in the Kepler system, he reported back to Earth. They call themselves the Aquari. Early spaceflight capability, unified world government, peaceful so far. Sending them the standard welcome package? Asked his communications officer. Modified for their specific development level and culture, Minjay confirmed. Mathematics, basic science, and most importantly, the message that they are not alone and they are free to choose their own path. It was a very different message from the one the coalition had sent to Earth. This new message emphasized choice, freedom, and the opportunity to join a community of equals. It shared knowledge freely but demanded nothing in return except respect for the rights of other intelligent beings. Ambassador So Young Choi had become the alliance's chief diplomat, helping to resolve conflicts and facilitate cooperation between species with very different cultures and needs. Her office received a constant stream of requests for help, trade negotiations, and cultural exchange programs. The Korth want to establish an arts colony with the Zenthari, she reported to the weekly Alliance Council meeting. Apparently Korth sculpture and Zenthari music create something beautiful together. And the former hegemony territories? Stabilizing. The local species are taking control of their own governments. Some want to join the Alliance immediately, others want to observe for a while longer. We're respecting their choice either way. Haewon Shin, Earth's first galactic historian, worked to document the transformation taking place across the galaxy. Her records showed that the change was not just political or technological, but cultural. Species that had been enemies for millennia were learning to work together. Art, music, literature, and science were flowering as different cultures mixed and learned from each other. The most significant change, she wrote in her latest report, is not in our technology or government structures. It is in how we think about ourselves and others. The concept that intelligence has inherent worth, regardless of its form or origin, has spread to every corner of the galaxy. But perhaps the most important work was being done by Soo-Jin Park and her team of xenopsychologists. They worked to help species overcome the psychological damage of millennia under oppressive rule. Many species had been taught that they were naturally inferior, that they needed guidance from their betters. Healing these wounds took time and patience. Progress is slow, Soo-Jin reported, but real. We're seeing former slave species developing their own technologies, creating their own art, and most importantly, making their own decisions about their futures. The signing ceremony on Luna was broadcast across the galaxy. Representatives from 247 species signed the Alliance Charter, formally establishing the Free Species Alliance as the new form of galactic government. The document was simple in its core principles. All intelligent life has inherent worth. All species have the right to self-determination, and knowledge should be shared freely for the benefit of all. President Yoon gave the closing speech to the assembled delegates in the galaxy beyond. 6 months ago, humanity received a message from the stars. We misunderstood that message, but in doing so, we discovered something important. The most powerful message is not what you say, but what you do. Today we send a new message to the galaxy and beyond, not through words, but through our actions. As the ceremony concluded, the Alliance's deep space monitoring stations picked up something extraordinary. A signal from beyond the galaxy. Another civilization making first contact. Dr. Yun Woo and Dr. Ji-un were called in to analyze the transmission. It was clearly from an intelligent source, but the mathematics and science were unlike anything they had seen before. It's beautiful, Ji-un whispered, studying the complex patterns. Completely different from anything in our galaxy, but definitely intelligent. What do we do? Asked Jae-sung Lim, who still coordinated galactic communications. The answer came from an unexpected source. Former High Counselor Morden, now serving as an advisor to the Alliance, spoke up. We do what humanity taught us to do, he said quietly. We respond with friendship, offer knowledge freely, and invite them to join our community as equals. But most importantly, we let them choose. The response was crafted not by any single species, but by the collective wisdom of the Free Alliance. Mathematicians from the Zenthari worked with human linguists and former coalition scientists. Artists from dozens of worlds contributed cultural elements. The message that finally went out represented the best of galactic civilization. It was simple. We hear you. You are not alone. Your destiny is your own to choose. As the message traveled toward the distant galaxy, Hyunwoo stood with his daughter Sujin on Luna's observation deck, looking out at the stars. Do you think they'll understand our message any better than we understood the coalition's? Sujin asked. Hyunwoo smiled. I hope they misunderstand it just as badly as we did, because our misunderstanding led to something better than anyone had imagined. And if they respond with hostility, then we'll show them the same thing we showed the coalition. That cooperation is stronger than domination, that shared knowledge grows faster than hoarded secrets, and that every intelligent being deserves the chance to choose their own path. The galaxy was still changing, still growing, still learning. There would be new challenges, new conflicts, and new opportunities. But for the first time in 50,000 years, those challenges would be faced not by subjects obeying their rulers, but by free beings working together as equals. Humanity had not gotten the original message, but the message they had sent in return, through their actions, their choices, and their unwavering belief in the worth of all intelligent life, had changed the galaxy forever. And now that message was traveling to the stars beyond, carrying with it the hope that freedom, once kindled, would continue to spread throughout the universe.